It's March 10th, 2026, and only a few hours ago, an event occurred that could change everything we thought we knew about space, technology, and the very fabric of reality. At exactly 8:42 UTC, the Master Control Station at Shriver Space Force Base reported an anomaly. Now, this was no ordinary glitch. This wasn't a malfunction. No, this was something much more perplexing, a synchronization event that defies every known law of orbital mechanics. Imagine this. There are 31 active GPS satellites orbiting Earth at an altitude of 20,200 kilometers, along with the European Galileo system and the Chinese BU constellation. These are independent systems, each running on different frequencies, using different encryption methods and atomic clock standards. The likelihood of all three of them experiencing the same nanosecond delay simultaneously is calculated at 1 inch 4.8 trillion. In other words, it should never happen. But at 8:42 UTC, all three systems didn't just experience a delay, they locked on. Every single global positioning satellite, for exactly 13 seconds, stopped referencing their internal atomic clocks and started referencing an external signal. Now, this is where it gets truly bizarre. When astrophysicists triangulated the source of that signal, they found that it didn't come from Earth, not from a ground station in Colorado, and not from some hacker's basement. No, it came from something 240 million kilometers away. It came from three objects, the three IATAS. Let that sink in for a moment. We've spent months analyzing the trajectory of three IATAs, debating whether it's a comet, a strange asteroid, or something else entirely. But while we were busy looking at it, it started looking at us. And not just looking, it took control of the most precise timing architecture humanity has ever built. The very infrastructure that we rely on every day, like our GPS systems, was suddenly under the influence of an unknown force. At first, when I saw the data from the U.S. Naval Observatory, I thought it was a calibration error. Perhaps the cesium clocks had drifted, but then I looked at the report from the National Physical Laboratory in the UK, and their data was identical. The signal variance? A mere 0.0000001%. That's not random noise. That's not a cosmic accident. That's a handshake. Now, I want you to think about something. In all my years of studying theoretical possibilities about Type 1 and Type 2 civilizations, we always wondered, how would they contact us? We assumed it would be through radio waves, maybe laser pulses. But we never considered that they could just log into our infrastructure. But that's exactly what happened. It wasn't just that we detected a signal, it was that three IATAs connected to our satellites engaged with our system and communicated with them. NASA's Deep Space Network has now confirmed that during those 13 seconds, the data wasn't being transmitted from Earth to space, it was flowing the other way. Three IATAs wasn't just syncing with the satellites, it was extracting telemetry logs. It knew exactly where our satellites were. This raises an even more terrifying question. Why does it need to know the precise location of every human on this planet? What could three IATAS be planning with this information? The answer may lie in a frequency pattern hidden inside that GPS signal 1 that should not even be possible. And what happened next is something that should keep you up at night. Let's dive deeper into the sheer magnitude of this event and the implications of what occurred at 8:42 UTC. When the GPS system locked onto that external signal, the first response from the Space Force was one of panic. The immediate assumption was that a cyber attack had taken place. They thought a terrestrial adversary might have spoofed the signal. But the physics, when examined closely, tell a completely different story. When the GPS satellites locked onto the external signal, the first thing that physicists examined was the Doppler shift. Now, when a signal comes from Earth, there's a specific frequency curve due to the relative movement of the satellites. Satellites orbiting the Earth are in constant motion, and so are the objects they're communicating with. This causes the frequency to change slightly as the object moves away or toward the satellite. But here's where it gets unsettling. If the signal were coming from Earth, there would have been a measurable Doppler shift. However, when the data was analyzed, it turned out that the frequency curve was flat, no shift at all. This signal didn't come from a satellite on Earth, it came from deep space. And here's the kicker, it came from 240 million kilometers away. The signal was constant, with no change in frequency, and that means one thing. It wasn't from Earth. This wasn't just an ordinary transmission, it came from a fixed point in the outer solar system. But here's the part that really defies explanation. 3 IATAs didn't overpower the transmitters on Earth. It didn't need to scream or send a giant wave of interference. Instead, it whispered. It was subtle, incredibly precise. NASA's Deep Space Network in Goldstone, California, detected the carrier wave at exactly 1,575.42 MHz, the L1 frequency, the exact frequency used by civilian GPS satellites. But this is the critical part. Simultaneously, the tracking station in Magua, Argentina, detected a secondary pulse on the encrypted military GPS band. And, as if that wasn't strange enough, JAXA's Yoshida Deep Space Center in Japan confirmed a third harmonic resonance that perfectly matched the Galileo system's atomic clock frequency. That's 3 independent space agencies from 3 different continents detecting the exact same signal within the exact same millisecond. The odds of a natural comet emitting 3 distinct modulated frequencies that just happened to align perfectly with Earth's GPS system, statistically impossible. This wasn't nature, this was engineering. And the precision needed here is mind-boggling. We're talking about an object moving at 28,000 kilometers per hour, spinning on its axis, yet it managed to send a coherent signal across millions of kilometers of vacuum. It hit a moving target, the satellite network, with an accuracy of less than 1 nanometer. If I were to replicate that in a lab, I'd need a supercomputer the size of a city block just to calculate all the variables. Yet, 3 IATAs did it effortlessly. But that's not the end of it. The signal wasn't just a broadcast, it was a query. If you've ever connected your phone to Wi-Fi, you've experienced a handshake. The router asks, "Who are you?" And your phone replies, "I am this device." That's what happened at 8:42 UTC. 3 IATAs initiated a handshake with every satellite in the GPS constellation. It sent a packet of data, basically a string of binary code that forced the satellites to respond. And here's the scariest part. The satellites, programmed to trust high authority signals, opened their gates. For 13 seconds, the firewall was down. The admin of the Global Positioning System wasn't in Colorado Springs. It was 3 IATAs. Pause for a moment and think about what this means. This means that the object, whatever it is, knows our protocols. It understands our encryption standards. It knows the fundamental mathematics behind how we track time and location on Earth. A rock, a chunk of ice, cannot learn encryption. A comet cannot decode L1 frequencies. So, what does that tell us? It suggests that whatever is inside or on 3 IATAs has been observing us for a long time. It has been listening to our radio leakage. It has learned our language, and now it's speaking it back to us. When I discussed this with my colleagues at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, the mood wasn't one of excitement. It wasn't joy. It was deep, profound concern. Because if you can handshake with a satellite, you can do more than just listen. You can tell that satellite what to do. You can alter its timestamp. You can shift its location. You can manipulate how the satellite perceives time and space. Imagine the chaos that would follow if every GPS device on Earth suddenly thought it was 10 meters to the left. Self-driving cars would veer into oncoming traffic. Airplanes would miss runways. Power grids, which rely on GPS timing to synchronize phases, would suffer catastrophic failures. Financial markets, which timestamp trades to the nanosecond, would collapse. But here's the thing, 3 IATAs didn't crash the system. It didn't hijack the satellites. It didn't cause any of these catastrophic failures. It simply demonstrated that it could. It showed us that it has the power to do so. It was a demonstration of capability, a power move, a Type 2 civilization move. It was like a master locksmith showing you that he has the key to your house, opening the door, stepping inside, and then stepping back out without taking anything, just to show you that your locks are meaningless. However, this doesn't end with satellites. The most disturbing part of all of this isn't just about the satellites, it's about what the satellites were tracking when this handshake occurred. At that exact moment, the GPS network wasn't just tracking cars, planes, and weather. It was tracking the smart devices in your pocket, the smartwatch on your wrist, and that leads us to the most terrifying aspect of all, the latency gap. Now, let's dive into something that defies the laws of physics. What happened on March 9th didn't just break security protocols. It actually violated one of the most fundamental principles of physics, Einstein's special relativity. You see, in physics, there's a limit, the speed of light. Nothing can travel faster than 299,792,458 meters per second. If you shine a laser from 3 IATAs, located 240 million kilometers away, it would take about 13 minutes and 22 seconds for that laser to reach Earth. This is a universal constant. There's no way around it. But when we analyzed the timestamps from the GPS satellites, we found a discrepancy that shouldn't exist. The signal didn't travel. It appeared. Let me explain. Normally, if a signal is coming from deep space, it first hits the satellites on the day side of Earth, the side facing the object. Then, milliseconds later, it should reach the satellites on the opposite side. There should be a measurable time gap, what we call propagation delay, but the data from the European Space Agency's logs showed 0 propagation delay. The satellite facing 3 IATAs and the satellite on the opposite side of the planet received the handshake signal at the exact same nanosecond. Think about that. Geometrically, it's impossible for a single point 240 million kilometers away to hit both sides of a sphere simultaneously. It's like throwing a rock into a pond and having ripples start at every point on the shore at exactly the same time, moving inward. That's not how nature works. That's not how physics works unless the source isn't where we think it is. This leads us to a theory that has been whispered about in the halls of quantum mechanics, the quantum entanglement hypothesis. What if 3 IATAs isn't just transmitting a regular radio wave? What if it has established a quantum link, a spooky action at a distance, with the silicon in our GPS receivers? If particles in 3 IATAs are entangled with particles in our satellites, the information transfer could be instantaneous. The distance becomes irrelevant. The speed of light, as we understand it, becomes just a suggestion, not a law. If this is true, then 3 IATAs is not just a comet or an asteroid. It's something much more sophisticated, potentially a macro-scale quantum computer, and it's just paired itself with Earth's digital infrastructure. Let that sink in. This isn't science fiction. This is the only model that fits the data we saw on March 9th. It's the only explanation for what happened, but it gets even stranger. When the handshake occurred, the flow of data didn't just come from the satellites to the object. The satellites started querying the ground. They pinged every active receiver on the planet. That means that, for those 13 seconds, 3 IATAs wasn't just syncing up with our satellites. It was creating a real-time 3D map of human movement across the entire planet. And this map was far more precise than anything the Pentagon possesses. We're talking millimeter-level accuracy. Normally, GPS has an error margin of about 3 to 5 meters. That's why sometimes your car's navigation system thinks you're on the service road instead of the main highway. But when 3 IATAs took control, the margin of error dropped to near zero. Why? Because when you need millimeter precision, you're not tracking cars or planes. You're tracking biology. You're tracking the subtle rise and fall of a wrist. You're tracking the gait of a walk. You're tracking the chest expansion of a breathing pattern. I had the chance to review the data packets that were uploaded during those 13 seconds. And they weren't just location coordinates. They contained accelerometer data, gyroscope data, and pulse rate data from smartwatches linked to the GPS network. In that moment, 3 IATAs didn't just find out where we were, it found out who we are. It took a biometric snapshot of the human race. Imagine a scanner sweeping across the planet in the blink of an eye, cataloging the location and vital signs of every person wearing a connected device. This isn't random sampling. This is targeted, and it's targeting us. But here's the thing. The devices that were tagged didn't just send data. They received a small, encrypted packet back, a tiny file, less than 4 kilobytes. What's in that file? We don't know. It's encrypted with a key that our most advanced supercomputers can't crack. But it's sitting on millions of devices right now, dormant, waiting. What is it? A message? A code? Or a trigger? Now, let's talk about what we do know for certain. On March 9th, 2026, the global GPS network synchronized with an extraterrestrial source. 3 IATAs bypassed our encryption protocols. It extracted biometric data from millions of devices and, perhaps most disturbing of all, it left behind a dormant 4 kilobyte file on the devices of a specific segment of the human population. These aren't just theories, folks. These are documented observations, confirmed by the highest levels of aerospace defense. However, there's one crucial question that remains unanswered, one that the official reports from NASA and the European Space Agency carefully avoid addressing. What triggers that code? In the world of cyber warfare, you don't plant a dormant file unless you have an intention to wake it up. Think about it. You plant a logic bomb to execute at a specific time or when it receives a particular signal. So, what's the plan here? What is 3 IATAs waiting for? Right now, 3 IATAs is accelerating toward the Sunday. As it gets closer, its surface temperature will rise. Its electromagnetic output will grow exponentially. Its ability to transmit data will increase, becoming much stronger. And that dormant file, sitting on your smartwatch, your phone, or other connected device, it might just be waiting for the object to get within range. This is where everything changes. If that file is just a simple data log, we've lost our privacy. If it's a reprogrammable key, we've lost control of our infrastructure. But if that file is a biological trigger designed to interact with the wearer in ways we can't even comprehend yet, then we are facing a paradigm shift that biology is not ready for. There is no middle ground here. The handshake has already been made, the connection is established, and the clock is running. As you're watching this, NASA's Deep Space Network is tracking a new fluctuation in the signal. The carrier wave is shifting, the frequency is modulating again. And while the data on the devices is currently silent, 3IATAS is on the move. Whatever that file was meant to do, whether it's a message, a trigger, or something else entirely, it has already begun. The second handshake is coming, and when it happens, the timeline for what's next will accelerate beyond anything we're prepared for. Whatever it is, it's happening right now. The clock is ticking, and humanity has just been put on notice. If you want to stay updated on what happens next and the incredible developments surrounding 3IATAS, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. The future of humanity might depend on it. We'll be diving deeper into this mystery as new information emerges. Stay tuned.